This show is sponsored by the Comics Shop. We hope you enjoy the show.
G'day and welcome to another Tuesday Chinwag. My name is Lee Chalker. I am the creator of the Australian independent comic book Battle for Bustle, published through Comics Studios. Now, before we introduce our guest, I'd just like to let you know that the show is simultaneously live streamed across two channels, one channel being ComX, the other being Aussieverse. Now, if you have never heard of either of these channels, their addresses are going across that little yellow ticker box across the bottom, so you can easily find them and access their content. ComX is a community based on everyone's love of comics. It's basically creators, shopkeepers, anyone that does have an interest in comic books are all welcome in the community to talk and chat and do their thing. There is also the Comics Studio, which is the publishing wing of ComX, and that is also tied into the Comics Shop, which sponsors the show. Now, the Comics Shop has over 100 Australian independent comic book titles. It is not solely for Comics Studio comic books. It is for everyone that publishes and creates comic books. There is a $9 flat rate, so that doesn't mean you just buy one, you can buy 20, it's all the same. Now, the Aussieverse is a group of people that basically love comic book pop culture and entertainment. On their live streams, they have live streams and what do you call it? You know, like they are across TikTok and Instagram and YouTube and Facebook, and they do hauls, what they've collected. They have interviews with creators and people and stuff like that, a whole myriad of content. And they've got like 300 videos. Go and check them out. All of these places are made with love, and the best thing you can do is like and subscribe them anywhere you can find them. So my guest this evening is a lady that I've wanted to meet for quite some time, and tonight is the moment. So I'm going to introduce everyone to Ms. Julie Ditrich. How are you, mate? Going well?
I am really good, and I'm very happy to be here and to meet you officially, and also to have met Shane as well.
Well, it's lovely to meet you, mate. I heard a lot about you and know quite a bit of what you do, and but I'm really interested to get into the nitty gritty of your story and all things comics and stuff like that you've been involved with over the years. So, for anyone that hasn't seen the show, it's based on who, what, where, when, how, and why. Look, you know, like I don't necessarily ask all of those questions. We just talk. It's chinwag. It's fluid. That's how we like it. That's how, you know, it is. It's just, we just roll with it. So everyone's welcome to make comments. If you've got any questions for Julie, please fire away. And hello to everyone out there. If I forget to say good day, and thank you for watching. Hello, Dave Dye. There's our first one.
Hi, Dave, and also hi to Gary Challoner.
Yes. And
hi, Nick.
Yeah. Hello, Gary. How are you, mate? All right. It's and there we go. All right. So, Julie, I'm just going to get straight into the meat and potatoes. Actually, I'm going to take that back because I'm a vegetarian. So I'm going to get into the plant-based schnitzel and vegetables. All right. So,
who am I?
Yes.
Oh, I am an Australian comics writer, and I also write short fiction. I do want to move into novels as well. I have a history of working in publishing from all points of view, from retail through to editing, through to marketing, through to publicity. I love animals. This is all personal stuff. I'm an introvert, so actually getting me speaking on here is a pretty good thing, Lee, which means that I really trust you. So thank you for the invitation, and thank you to your community as well for welcoming me. I live on a farm and I freelance. I'm into I'm quite a self-aware person, and I like to do a lot of work on myself. So through my personal history, I would have done a lot of different courses about, finding out who I am, basically, and all the different parts of myself. And this is something that I channel also into my writing, which is about breaking down characters and understanding characters on a deep and emotional and feeling level. So that's me in a nutshell. I love comics. The genres I like are fantasy. I'm not necessarily into horror, but I do like speculative fiction, even though, weirdly enough, I've written a couple of horror pieces, and they are actually, I shocked myself because I actually was able to do them. I'm not a gore person. I don't like blood and guts and gore because I'm very, very sensitive to that kind of stuff. But psychological horror is probably more my game. I love mermaids. Anyone who knows me, Gary, you know me. That's my fantasy creature of choice, which I've had a connection to since I was very little. And that kind of is just a little bit of an introduction to who I am. And as I said before, I love animals, so I'm always looking after animals as well. You've frozen, Lee. Is the connection still there?
Can hear us. There we go. You there, Julie?
Yeah, you froze for a moment.
You there, mate?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, no. Sometimes this is
Sorry, Lee, you've frozen again.
get our connections back up and running. And
You running
there
there,
we
buddy?
go. I should be back up and running
I'm
there,
here.
hopefully.
I'm doing well, but you're back.
All right, so I'm back. Okay, well, let's see how we go. Look at that. The gods are with us now. So
You're a little bit
back,
blurry.
what was it?
Though. You are a bit blurry,
I'm a little
Lee,
blurry.
though. Yes, a little
Oh,
blurry.
okay. That's all
Now
right.
that's
well,
starting to become
that's
more
better.
crisp. Yes.
Oh, that maybe the sun, the North Queensland sun, finally got me, like all crispy for you, mate. But I apologise. I apologise about that. These bloody technological issues and everything that happened. I'm going to start. What got you into mermaids? What attracted you to that? Was that a thing when you were a young Julie, or?
Yeah. I think when I was in primary school, I remember going to the library, and there was a series of books by Ruth Manning Sanders, who wrote them, and an illustrator called Robin Jacques. They were from England, and there was probably about 15 in the series, and they would have a book of giants, a book of ogres, a book of trolls, and a book of princes and princesses. But there was one there that was called a Book of Mermaids, and I borrowed it, and I was so entranced with the mermaid stories and the illustrations that I borrowed that book over and over and over again. And then, of course, when you watch animated features like Fantasia, there's that big kind of Greek Roman mythology. I can't remember which one it was, but there's little tiny mermaids in one of the scenes. And then in Peter Pan, the animated Disney feature, hiya, Don. There's there's all the mermaids in Neverland. And there was something about them that I loved. Plus, I was a water baby. I was a really good swimmer from a very young age, and I could swim underwater for a long time. So there was something about the water and these scriptures that I just gravitated to. I will tell you this. I always coveted that particular book. So when I left school and I was actually earning some money, this was pre-internet. I found an I looked for the books, and there were maybe 3 in print, and all the others were out of print, including a book of mermaids. So I found an antiquarian book dealer in Sydney, and he chased down the entire collection, bar one, which I didn't even know existed, but was given to me as a gift about 4 or 5 years ago. And he hunted them all down, and he found this secondhand edition of a Book of Mermaids from somewhere in Florida, and I paid something like $200 for it, and it was worth every single cent. So I actually have it in my library. And if anyone was to ask me, outside of family photos and things like that, what's your most valuable possession, that would be one of them, you know. So I just love it so much.
So that he basically, obviously you weren't aware, you're saying, that book was in existence. He just went out and about and did his antiquarian thing, and found you this book that was associated.
I was able to order the 3 that were in print through a bookshop, and all the others he found for me, like the Book of Dragons, and so I've got the whole set. But that particular one is that's my prize possession. Plus, in my library, I've got like a whole lot of mermaid books now, all these illustrated ones and mythology ones and everything. So that's my mythological, I suppose, symbol, character, creature, whatever you want to call it, of that I really gravitate to.
Yeah, right. No, that's cool. So like that's really cool. That was and that got you off into like your I guess your fantastical reading and started off the kickstart of the imagination, I suppose, and has continued on. Now, Julie, most people that have particular interests in certain things or totems. Have you got a mermaid tattoo on your ankle or anything like that?
I have absolutely no tattoos whatsoever. Having said no tattoos, I have no markings, no ink on my body. But I will say that a few years ago, which has got nothing to do with tattoos whatsoever, except for some people I met, when I was launching one of Black Mermaid Productions' titles, I found out that there was the World Mermaid Awards, the very first World Mermaid Awards and Mermaid Convention happening in Las Vegas. And it's like, I have to be there. I have to launch this this comic there. So all my money came together. We had the comic published. I went over to America, met all this mermaid community that I didn't know existed. This was in 2011. There was a budding mermaid community out there. And so for a few days, I met all these fantastic people, including a woman called Hannah Mermaid, who is actually an Australian, and she comes from Byron Bay and is the most famous mermaid in the world. And she is she does all these incredible performances, is photographed all the time. And I was really happy to find out that she was Australian as well. And then over the years, I'm on the edge of the community because even though I'm a good swimmer, I don't feel the compulsion or need or want to put on a tail and go swimming, like a mermaid. I prefer to write about them. But, there's an Australian Mermaids Facebook page, and I'm one of the admins on there. And there's thousands of people on there. There's all these mermaid activities happening all around the world. It's really incredible. But as I said, I'm just on the fringe of it. The real diehard mermaid people They're very, very serious. Actually, on Netflix, there's a 4 or 5 part series about mermaiding in the US and the trials and tribulations and everything that they have to learn to do, how to breathe underwater, how to pose underwater, all this kind of stuff. That's a fascinating series. Hannah Mermaid is featured in there as well. So if there's anybody out there interested in this,
it's actually like a synchronized type of affair and swimming thing, is it? Like it's very highly organized.
There is it's a community of people who identify with mermaids and who want to become performing mermaids, essentially. And then they choose the degree of performance that they want. Those who want to be professional, they need to be across a lot of skills. For example, they need to know how to hold their breath underwater, how to dive deeply, monitor, keep their lungs, I really don't know the technical aspects of that. But the deep water diving, that their competitions, a lot of them actually do that kind of training to learn to hold their breath for 4 or 5 minutes or so. They have to be able to descend to the bottom of a tank. They have to be able to pose in certain ways so that the tail is the most important part of the mermaid visually. So they have to be able to pose with their tail and the fin and get beautiful shapes in the water, underwater. And so that when they're photographed, there's these like magical moments so it's very complex craft, way beyond anything I could do. So I'm just focusing on my writing. That's where I'll put it.
Man, I think that's beautiful. I had absolutely no idea that there was any sort of mermaid community in Australia, let alone like the world, let alone Australia. It's I mean, you can tell you're very passionate about it, and I mean, like, I'm feeling the vibration. I'm getting passionate about this mermaid community. I want to go and see this documentary on Netflix and stuff now because
go check it out. I can't remember what it's called, but just put in Netflix mermaid documentary and it'll come up for you, and then you'll really find out about how intricate it is, and and the challenges that come with it. If you haven't got, you have to look at safety. That's like a real priority, and you have to make sure that you're very calm underwater, that you're not getting anxious. There's a whole lot of, it's very complex anyway, but it's beautiful at the same time.
It's I love the fact, like, this is what I love about Chinwags, because I just get to learn so much. Like, I had absolutely no idea, but it's like really like sparked off an interest in me, because I get a real kick out of people finding those little creative niches that bring I guess the best out, and their passion, and like they're really for it and stuff, you know what I mean? And I think that sounds fantastic. I'm really glad that you're an admin there and keeping a watch out on the people in the mermaid community. I'm very happy that you also got to launch your book in Las Vegas.
It was
that would have it's did it when you got to automatically, this is just where my brain goes, Julie, and these are just some of the things.
That's okay.
These are some of the things that I would have thought, like, just for humor's sake, that a mermaid convention possibly would have been held a little bit closer to the coast as opposed to Las Vegas in a desert. So what was that like? Did they have like giant, like, serious? Like, did they have like big?
No, I know you're serious. I know you're serious.
And people would like.
So it was going to be in the Mirage Hotel. I had actually booked my accommodation there. And apparently they've got a big pool and they had dolphins in there and anything. But that was actually considered to be a bad choice by the people who organised it, because the mermaid community very much sympathise and align themselves with marine eco warriors, and part of their philosophy is that no animals be trapped or held captive, and if there were dolphins there, so they actually cancelled the Mirage, and then they moved it to the Silverton Hotel, which is even further in the desert. But what they had is a giant aquarium. So all the professional mermaids were able to, and they actually have a mermaid show running there, which is there for everyone. So that mermaid show was on for the, all the guests and everyone, or any visitors to the casino, but also then the visiting mermaids who were part of the convention and the awards were able to don their tails and actually swim in there as well. So that was the thought behind it. But ordinarily, if you look at a lot of groups and pods, they're called. There's one down in the Mornington Peninsula in Victoria. There's one over in Western Australia, in Perth, just up a little from Perth. And there are some up in the Gold Coast and around there. And there's people who travel from Sydney to SeaWorld, and they do performances there. They're like more along the ocean. So that was kind of an aberration, but really it was about the tank and the accommodation and getting people in from all over the world. Yeah.
That is fantastic. I love it. Like, that's a great, man. That's one of the, that is cool. It's thank you for sharing that. I enjoy things like that. It's I do. It's just, that's great.
Thanks for being so open.
Anyone out there, go and check it out. Support these people. The best part is, as well, is like they're eco warriors, and they look at send out a message as well, looking after animals in the oceans and all of that sort of stuff. Very important. I mean, I'm up in the Great Barrier Reef, and we have our fair share of issues up here, mate, out in the oceans and stuff. It's
you'll find that there's a lot of mermaids who support marine conservancy. Is that the right word? And Australian ones are definitely aligned with protecting the barrier reef.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love it. It's it's fantastic. So I'm going to when you were into your getting into your fantasy readings and your fairy tales and mermaids and things like that, and you were mentioning a little bit of I suppose you would have gone down the myths and legends route there as well, with all the Roman legends, things like that. And that flows. Yeah, man. Oh, my dad, man. I've got books too inside that are I've kept them for years. Dad used to buy fairy tale books, and they were all like the Greek legends of, beautiful painted pieces, and you'd sit there.
Are you talking about the Reader's Digest series? I think it was a Reader's Digest series, and they had all these legends from around the world and these most beautiful, beautiful editions with beautiful covers. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, they are leather bound.
Okay.
And in the middle of them, they've got these beautiful paintings, and and as you open them, they're like the stories of how they came to be, from what areas of the world at that stage and what times, and then the story and things. And my dad was a really eclectic collector of things. Everything from myths and legends to comic books to Second World War militaria. We used to have uniforms up in wardrobes, specially bought wardrobes, and he used to collect all of these things. And it was quite an interest, and it was decommissioned rifles and stuff like that from the Second World War. when we were in places like Sydney and Brisbane, we were always visiting particular individuals. I was tagged along, obviously, because I was the only child. And, where are we going today, Dad? We're just going to see a man, And here's Dave died. Julie, my daughter, is the
look at that.
Whitsunday mermaid in Airlie Beach, Queensland. Hey,
That's
I love
brilliant,
this
Dave.
symmetry. Awesome.
That is synchronicity if ever I've come across it.
Hey, I love it. That's great,
Yeah.
man. The beautiful things come out of Chinwag. We didn't know that about Dave Dye either. So there you go.
No, we did not.
Yes. So did your
picking up from what you just mentioned, there was a out at Lithgow every year. It stopped about during COVID, and I don't know whether they're resurrecting it or not. There was a weekend called Iron Fest, and technically, it started off with. I didn't go to the earlier ones. I only went to the later ones. But it started off as being a place where artisans could come and show off their blacksmithing crafts and everything. But it grew and it expanded, and they had a lot of people coming in with, people who had a passion for a particular military period as well.
Yeah.
So they would get groups in who would put on American uniforms or Australian uniforms from the Korean War, and then Vietnam, and then World War One and World War Two, and they'd have all the armaments that were true to the time, and they had vehicles that were true to the time. So it was always really interesting to walk around and to chat with these people. And weirdly enough, I live on a farm, and there was some sheds we leased out, and there was a gentleman and some of his friends who collected Vietnam War vehicles. So the entire shed was filled with all this memorabilia from the Vietnam War. I think he might have been a soldier there, and he became very passionate. There was, it just went even down to the little nuts and bolts. It was the big stuff and then all the little stuff as well. It was incredible. So I understand where you're coming from.
Oh, man, it was pretty. It was, I understand the passion of that collecting sort of thing too, because like my family come from the Chalker side come from Gundagai. So whenever we were in Gundagai, majority of our family obviously migrated to Canberra and the surrounding areas. And it was one of those things that, again, I'd get dragged along, but I grew to love it. It'd be like opening Australian War Memorial, and it'd be like like Dad said, it wouldn't be a day or like 4 hours. It was like, this was a 2-day thing, man. Do you know what I mean? Like with Dad, and we'd scour everything, read everything, like go everywhere, look at the artwork, look at all the models and all that sort of stuff. And it was a really, I think that's part of also where, apart from comic books as well, your storytelling, like mine did anyway, picks up, because you're reading about these heroes and stuff, and there's heroes and villains on every side, regardless of whether you look at it. But those dioramas you get, and they'd have them like all the little dugouts and the trenches and stuff built, and then they'd have those mattes in the background where they paint the backgrounds of the wars and stuff. I sit there for hours, man, and that's where I discovered Ivor Hillay, the Australian war artist from Long Tan and stuff, that eventually went to did a lot of the portraits of the Australian prime ministers back in the day and stuff like that. If anyone's never seen that dude's artwork, go and check him out. That man was amazing, and still to this day, that's one of my cherished books, Julie. I picked that up when I was a little kid.
I know.
And still blows my mind. Yeah, like
there's something about these cherished books where you just turn the pages slowly and you caress the paper, and you gently put the covers together, and there's something really beautiful about them. But I love I love the War Memorial, and I love that. Is it called like where all the something of remembrance? I can't remember.
The hall,
Hall of Remembrance. I love going down there, and then I love going into that vestibule where they've got all those beautiful stained glass. And the mood changes. Like, I mean, I've got goosebumps right now because it's like I can feel myself there, and there's this beautiful silence and this incredible energy. And it's just so calming and tranquil in there. And when you walk past all the names as well of the fallen soldiers, there is that moment where you reflect and send your respects out as well. There was one particular exhibition that was there I went to a few years ago. I think it was the dude from Channel 7, can't remember. He who owns Channel 7, is it Kerry Stokes?
I have no idea.
I don't know. I don't know. He actually funded it, and it came from this village or town in France from World War One, and there were all these soldiers from Australia who went there to help the villagers, and they took these photographs of them, with these old-fashioned cameras. But then the photos or the negatives were stored in this barn somewhere, and about 15 years ago, they found this treasure trove of them. And so I think it was Kerry Stokes. He put together a team or funded the project to actually bring them to life. And then they had that exhibition in Canberra at the War Memorial, which was really beautiful. The photos were actually quite incredible. Anyway.
Yeah. See, there we go. This is Chinwag. Like this is the fluidity. It's I love when, because I have photos of my family in Gundagai. One of my aunts, my nan's sisters back in the day, and my dad's sisters had a camera, and they were had everything back in the day. So I've got a lot of black and white photos around of people from Gundagai and like that Tumut and that area of New South Wales. And I love looking at these people and like wondering, their story. What was their story? Where did they end up? What were they thinking at that moment? Did they have a good life? Did they have, did things happen? I guess in a weird way too, Julie, I love when I go to towns. This probably sound weird to people, but it's just something I like to do. Okay, it's just me. What do you do? I like to stop at cemeteries. All right, if I'm cruising through a town, love pulling up at a cemetery, man, and spending some time wandering around and looking at these.
There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, Jules Faber put a picture of Waverley Cemetery up the other day on his Facebook feed. And I said the best views in Sydney, which is true. But some cemeteries are fascinating. When I was really young, I put a car rally together, and I got everyone to stop at a cemetery and go and look at. It wasn't meant to be disrespectful. It was. Yeah, I love them too. Rookwood here, Waverley Cemetery, which overlooks the Pacific Ocean, out near Bondi and everything, and some of these ancient ones as well. I don't blame you. There's something intriguing about them that pulls you in.
It certainly is, especially when you're driving down little roads. And they're little roads. Your GPSs can take you in the weirdest places, especially in Western New South Wales. It tells you there's a road, but then there's like just two tire marks, and the grass is like 6 foot long in the middle of it, and you're wondering where you're going. And then suddenly there's the old rusted iron, like petition gate, and there's like, a mother and a husband and a wife there, and you're thinking like, wow, they must have lived out here, back in that particular, time. And I don't know, I love that romanticism of people on frontiers and adventure and stuff. That's probably,
and you speculate, you wonder what are their stories, and there are so many lost stories out there that people will never know.
Yeah, I agree, man. I agree, 100%. I guess that's why we like telling stories, mate. You know what I mean? And like
Well,
doing
yeah.
life.
Look, I did something because my family have got an incredible survival story from World War II. But many years ago, my Russian grandmother was alive, and she would be completely pro-Ukrainian these days if she was still alive, because she can't stand like the baddie Russians, and they got out of Russia because of that during World War II. Um, I sat down with her and I did an oral history with her, and I found out the most incredible things, like, and it also gave me a real appreciation of everything that my grandparents and great grandmother and my mother had to go through to get to
Mm,
Australia. The fact that I was born at all is like a miracle, because they weren't meant to come to Australia. That was post-war. They were meant to
mm,
go off to Argentina, but like 2 days before they were meant to go, um, the Argentinians decided not to take any more immigrants, and so they were given a choice of either Canada or Australia, and their entire basis of coming to Australia was because they had sold all their warm clothes, and they had asked the question, does it snow in Canada? Yes. Does it snow in Australia? No, not really. So they came to Australia. So there's so many hits and misses along the way. And I
mm.
think I think it really made me appreciate my family history and the opportunities and the privilege I have of being born in Australia and having a good education and having food and shelter and things like that. But also, it really connected me to my family. And I really think I have to do it with my mum and dad as well. And I really think that if people actually sat down and did that with their family, it would it is change. It does actually change you.
Oh,
Um,
100%.
yeah,
I would agree. I had a similar um, thing happen to me. I hadn't seen my dad's family down that way for about 10 years. And then
Gundagai.
yeah.
Yeah,
And I strangely felt, I guess I've always had a sense of, I just felt something was missing, you know. I
yeah,
knew my mum's side of the family, but I was too young. I was very young when I had lots to do with the Chalkers, and I decided one day, basically, I said to Susan, who I was with at the time, basically within the space of a day, I was just like, I'm going to Gundagai. And
yeah.
it was a bit of, oh, okay, no worries. And I just got in the car pretty much and
Took
um,
off.
see ya, gone, and went out on my own, you know, traveling and stuff, and pulled up in Gundagai and proceeded to, man, learn so much about, you know, like this other half of my family and what they did, and it gives you a real sense of uh, I guess almost wholeness, you know, like a sense
Yeah,
of connectedness with your ancestors and your heritage and stuff like that, you know. And yeah, I felt a real bond to Gundagai, even though I live in Townsville. I do, in a strange way, consider Gundagai like my place. You know, like I
yeah.
mean, the cemetery is littered with like 150 years of, like, you know, chalkers and family and stuff, and
Wow.
then yeah, and then there's crazy stories about how my grandfather, his brother, um, was drinking, and they were trying to clear rabbits out of their paddocks, and they were dropping dynamite down the rabbit warrens, and old mate forgot, you know, like where he dropped the dynamite, so that was the end of you know, like of a young life, because, you know, like, and it would have been awful things to hear, you know, to witness and hear of at the time,
Yeah.
but good to have that knowledge that, you know, that's what the cavalier nature of, those days, mate. There was no workplace
Yeah.
health and safety.
No,
Mate, like it was just, oh, we got to do it. Let's go, But
I think
beautiful.
I read something the other day that Gen X is the last generation of the kind of free roaming kids and childhoods where you would go out for a day and just eat a sandwich from the next door neighbor and come back at night and go right off on your bike without any parental intervention. And now
Yeah.
it's completely different. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely have that. I like wandering. I do. I don't do it all the time, but when I get that bug, man, it's like car gone. There's not a lot of warning either. It's just like I got money, I got fuel, I got a destination, I want to go, so I go, and it's very enjoyable. Traveling, road tripping by yourself too, man. Because you get put in unexpected situations. You meet the most amazing people, which add to storytelling as well. Like I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but there's a little town out in southwest Queensland that has this beautiful old cinema, and in the front window is this giant porcelain statue of Marilyn Monroe.
Wow.
And the last film that was played there, I think it was Some Like 'Em Hot. That's the one where she's standing over the vent.
No, that's the 7-year itch. The 7-year
Okay.
itch. Yeah.
Well, the statue was to do with the premiere of that movie,
Yeah.
and I only found this out because I pulled up to take a photo, and there was a dude walking down the street with a sheep on a chain tied to his belt, and I was like, you sort of half like, am I really seeing this? And I
Yeah.
can't
Yeah.
let this
Surreal.
opportunity go. So, hello, how are you? And we got talking for a good 10 or 15 minutes. He ended up being a nice fella, you know what I mean? Like probably a touch eccentric, but hey, just adds a little bit more flavor. But
I've always been drawn to eccentric people or
yeah,
people that are quirky because I
yeah,
don't consider myself normal in any shape or form.
yeah,
Normal.
man. What is normal? Like I think, what is normality? I don't know. That's one of those open-ended words, man. It's just too hard a question. It's like, why does the sun come up, man? Do you know what I mean? It's just normal. It's boring, like there's so much to think about and let your mind wander and stuff. But as we're talking about all these things that influence us, what was the first comic book that tickled your fancy, so to speak, that primed you for like, oh, I like this?
Probably all the Disney comics, which I read
Yeah.
between the age of, say, 8,
Yeah.
7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I grew up in a rural area, but once a week my father would take either the car or the truck down to the petrol station, and they'd have a little news agency section in there.
Yep.
And I'll tell you straight out, and I know people might hate me for this, but I'm a late starter in terms of DC and Marvel.
Yep.
I was never exposed to it. We didn't have any comic shops or anything like that. So my early exposure was to Disney comics. I still have them all. I used to read them over and over again. They were the most fantastic stories in there. I used to love Donald Duck and, going off with his nephews and Scrooge McDuck and a couple of the Mickey Mouse ones, which had really fantastic stories to them. Love them. I've still got my entire collection of them. I might have to go and add some more to it because I just feel very nostalgic about them. I remember somebody at school lending me Mighty Mouse as well, and so I sort of read that. I also, when I was in primary school, there used to be these girls' annuals and boys' annuals that came out. I don't know whether you know what I'm talking about, but they always used to have short comic stories in there, and I was like, bang, straight into them. So that's all the early influences. And then I had a few Phantom comics as well, because they were always there in the petrol station. So I bought a few of those, and I still have them as well. So in high school, I used to live in the library, and there were two graphic novel series that I was drawn to. The premium one, the one that just had me in stitches, was Asterix, and the Asterix series.
Yeah.
I just laughed from beginning to end. I just thought they were absolutely brilliant. But there was also Tintin there. But I preferred Asterix as well. So that's all my early introduction to comics. They're the ones that influenced me the most. But the Disney comics, people might just kind of, cast aside, but the storytelling was fantastic in there. Really, truly fantastic.
Yeah. I've got quite a few of those in the collection. Not heaps, just because Dad, obviously being, because my mum was a reader. Like, my mum was voracious. Good evening,
Hi,
Peter.
Peter.
Thanks for watching, bud. And
Hi,
hello,
Steve.
SK. How are you, champion? Julie is easily one of the nicest and best people in the Australian comic book scene. Well,
thank
SK,
you very much.
certainly am going to agree with you.
Is that Ez?
That's him. That's him. That's the one and only.
Oh, Ez is like brilliant. We've had lunch together. When we get on the phone, we just talk.
Yeah. He's a good little dude. I like
Camperdown Cemetery. Yeah, I actually house sat out at Newtown once. I went there to that cemetery to have a little look. So I think you're right, Don.
Mm. Here we go. Looks like you're half an hour behind the conversation again, Don. Cheeky Dave died there, mentioning my penchant for sheep as well. It's
I've had a herd of sheep. I've got 3 left out of 30. So they've been gradually declining. So I'm completely into sheep. And I've actually co-written a graphic novel, which actually has a lamb in there as the not the central character, but the character. It's not like talking sheep. They're like, it's the catalyst character that starts the whole story for the kid characters. So I'm completely into sheep.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I've had a weird experience with sheep. I've not known any of them for a long period of time, like just passing by, really. My vision of them is that in the distance, they're very cool looking creatures, and then when they're up close to you and they're looking you over and stuff, like they're a little bit edgy, and then in the distance you hear bah, 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 this melodic, like bah, and then like they're standing 2 feet away from you, and forgive the noise, but you hear this bah, and it just freaks me out, man. Like that was just one of those things I've had since I was a kid. So that's why I was a little bit nervous about the dude with, like this sheep on a chain. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was like, whoa, demon sheep. But anyway,
I hope the sheep was okay, because they could easily choke on that. They're not.
I don't think he was leading the sheep, Julie. I got the impression that this sheep was a dear companion, because, mate, there wasn't much happening in this town. Let me tell you, I actually felt like he drew the short straw, as in like they were all looking from behind the curtains and the blinds and stuff. And they were like, there's a coast person out there. We need, get out there. Take the sheep with, I think that was how it felt to me anyway. And they probably all cheered, when I left. But interesting dude. But no, the sheep looked all right to me, mate. Very happy. So nothing. And being a vegetarian and also much like yourself having a love of animals, I do take particular notice of animals, and I just remember chuckling away and thinking that dude really liked his sheep. So like I can appreciate that, man. I don't know what they did
Well
together.
done,
They
dude.
may have watched the Test match cricket. They may have listened to it on the ABC radio while they were out wandering the paddocks and checking fences. I don't know, but
Mm.
they were tight, man. Uh, so when with your I actually, when you were talking about those boys annuals and girls annuals, because I keep like a lot of comics over just out of reach, and I found one the other day. Can't remember the name of it. Dad used to collect them, and they were like probably 2000 AD size comic books. They were fairly thick, and they had like little war stories, and then some of them would be 2-3 page stories, and then there'd be ads for kids' toys. Like those the ad, like the X-ray glasses. Like, come on, man.
Yeah. God, I used to love. I got myself. I actually, you know what I used to look at, Lee? Those bloody sea monkey ads. Because they looked like mermaids, like a mermaid. I actually bought, when I was about 9, I bought myself a packet and a little tank for them. I got them and I put them in there and fed them and looked after them. And then it's like, what happened? They kind of disappeared. It was like, I think they're brine shrimp or something. I don't know. But they didn't look anything like the picture. I was heartbroken. I really thought they were little. I thought they were going to be little families with these little, they've got those little antenna things with the balls on the end. Yeah, the X-ray glasses. I used to think, I want a pair of those X-ray glasses. So
see anything, to do his hand up, and then you had the bodybuilder, looked like Mr. Universe in 30 days, like right, like with some little metal bar that like I don't know, but I remember like they like really used to obviously people used to like enjoy them much as like yourself. I mean, look, I'm one for a good mail off and getting things back. You don't get that as much anymore. Like, because I used to love
just go on
toys.
Amazon. I'm going to look it up. Can you get sea monkeys on Amazon?
I don't know. Maybe you could. I know. Hey, I tell you what, a mate of mine in the community, Ed Kearsley's does a little mini comic about sea monkeys, and they're like have their kingdom, and check it out. It's pretty cool.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He's a good dude too, like Ed. He that's one of his. He's got a little Patreon and stuff, but he does a sea monkey thing, and he loves them too. And I used to collect toys, and they used to like Transformers and GI Joe, and they used to have little coupons on the back, So when you'd buy 10 of them, you could collect these coupons, stick them in an envelope, mail them off to some God knows where place to get a rare toy back. And it wasn't in the day where you'd get a drone to you, 2 days later or anything. You'd have to wait like 6 months before this thing.
I know.
But it was so exciting, man. Oh man, it was the best day ever. When I got my Cobra Commander with the hood, I was happy. But anyway, I digress. But these are just nice.
And don't forget all the Phantom stuff. You could get the Phantom rings and all of that.
Yeah.
All of those things. I mean, they're all collectibles. They're worth a fortune now.
Yeah, I know. There'd be people out there sitting on a pretty penny too, man. With all that sort of stuff. It's now with the Phantom. Talking about that, you've got a little connection there with the Phantom. Do you not?
I do.
Would you like to elaborate on that for the
Would you
people?
like me to elaborate, Lee?
I think that would be a fantastic story for you to tell.
Okay, so a few years ago, I went out to dinner with a whole bunch of comics people, and Glenn Ford was there, and Chris Sequeira was there as well. He introduced me to Glenn Ford, and Glenn Ford asked me whether or not I'd be interested in actually contributing and writing for the Phantom. I said, absolutely. So he gave me a very specific brief at that time. He wanted me to focus on some he wanted me to bring in some women readers because it was the readership of the Phantom is mostly 35, 40 plus year old men, and he wanted to expand the readership or work on that. And at that time, Paul Mason and Andrew Constant, I think, were doing Kid Phantom, so they wanted to reach the next generation of readers, but they also wanted to bring in women readers. So the brief I was given was to pitch some Diana Palmer stories and some Julie Walker stories. But then suddenly Glenn came back to me and said, "Oh, we've got this graphic novel anthology coming out, and it features this character called Princess Sin." And he sent me these 3 Princess Sin stories that had come out in the 1970s. And Princess Sin was this, like, a real formidable adversary, villain, who, she was wanted to both kill the Phantom, but also, she coveted to him and just wanted him for herself. And then there was a sequel by Dale McCanty. A prequel by Dale McCanty that had been written prior to these 3 that were set in a time prior to the 3 1970s versions. And then Glenn asked me if I could do a sequel to, and everything will come out at once. It will come out in conjunction with a game that they were putting through Kickstarter. So I said, yeah, absolutely. So I wrote him a pitch. I wrote a whole lot of pitches for the other stuff, but then I wrote a specific pitch for that one. He said, yep, that's good. Then I did the outline for it. He said, yeah, but it needs more action. So I learned a lot along the way. I had to learn to work in a different structure to what I was used to. And I had to, like, for every 24 pages of story, basically, you had to have really about 3 action scenes in there. So it was very action driven. And then wrote the outline. He gave me a couple of notes, and then wrote the script, and then was signed off on. And then a fantastic Brazilian artist called Wendell Cavalcanti came on board, and he actually did the artwork for that. And then a few years ago, I can't remember when it was, I think it was pre-COVID, the book came out in conjunction with the game, and then it was also published. There was a print run beyond that as well. So that was very exciting. And then Glenn asked me to do something else, and I had read a few Phantom stories, and I wanted to. There was one particular one that grabbed my attention called the Golden Circle. It was set in Paris, and the actual story was written in the late 30s, and it was about this criminal gang. They were all women. They were very murderous. They were really bad, real baddies. So I really liked that story. So I said, look, I'd like to do a sequel to that. And so I wrote a 96-page story, 4 issues, called The Return of the Golden Circle, and we're something like 6 pages away, or Wendell was assigned to it. So he's 6 pages away. He's done all the penciling of inking the last 6 pages for the whole thing. So sometime this year it will come out. And that was so much fun. I don't know. It was like, it was just one of those stories that just flowed out. It was so much fun. I do a lot of research for these stories as well. So
I was going to ask you, did you go deep into Phantom lore to do it?
Yeah,
like, is that
I did.
Yeah.
I did. I spent several months. Glenn sent me a whole lot of material to read, like these big volumes and a lot of vintage stuff. And we had to work out where to position the stories outside of wanting to bring in a female audience. We don't want to alienate the existing audience. But there is like a chasm between the traditional reader of the Phantom that loves the vintage material, and
Yep.
then the people who love the new original material, where you're you don't want to, you're not reinventing the lore, but
Yep.
you have to kind of reinvent. You have to reinvent um, some of the I suppose, relationships and dynamics and things for the 21st century. Um, for example, I mean, I identified things that I really wanted to avoid. I wanted to avoid killing animals
Yep.
in there, and I came up with a list and I sent it to Glenn and I said, "Do you agree with this? Can you give me notes?" And he agreed with that. So I avoid killing animals in the stories that I write. There might be a animal threat, but I work towards the notion that there's a way to get out of that situation without actually killing them. So
Yep. Yep.
that's one of the things I look at. And another thing is, how does the Phantom react to new technology? Is
Mm.
he caught in the old world? How does he respond to new technology? So this is some of the things I touch upon in this story that's going to come out.
Yep.
And then I've also written another Phantom story that's a 32-page horror, more horror themed story, and that
Yep.
one's set up at Daintree, sort of close to you.
Pretty close. Pretty
Yeah,
close.
not next door, but pretty. You're about in all of our group here. You're probably the closest in location
Yeah.
and vicinity
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
the Daintree. So that was completely different flavour
Yeah.
to what I had done before as well. But every single one of them demands a lot of research. So it's not just the lore, but when I write stories, I want to make sure that the scenes that I write, if an expert looked at them, that they would say, yeah, that's got credibility and that could happen.
Yep.
Like I use some explosives in The Return of the Golden Circle, and I actually talked to an explosives expert because I had planned this scene. I thought that something could happen in this way. And he said, no, it couldn't. You'd have to have this, 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 and he even tested it and showed me pictures of how he'd tested it. So I worked with consultants along the way
Yep.
to help me, really drill down. And sometimes it's simple, like cars, weaponry, buildings. So it's really, there's a lot there. There's a lot that goes in there, but I love it. Absolutely
Yeah.
love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Sorry about
Yeah.
that. I
No,
went on a ramble there.
oh man, no, I like the Phantom too. I get as many of them as I can, and I hear Facebook user. Great to see you, Julie. Any cats within camera shot?
Oh, all right.
We
I
might
don't
have
know.
some
I don't know
visitors.
who.
Yeah.
I don't know who the Facebook user is, but I will tell you this: this interview or this Chinwag was originally going to be in my office, but I have 5 rogue kittens running around there, and I walked in there. I was just setting up, and they were jumping out of their pen, jumping everywhere. They managed to open up the door to the pen. They were climbing all over the screen door. Earlier in the day, one had got out and then came and curled up and sat right here, and another one came up and sat right here. And I thought, no, I can't do this because I'd be forever breaking out of the discussion. So we've had to relocate into another room. So the
Yeah.
answer is no for the moment.
May get lucky though. May get lucky. We've like had little discussions. If Mum Cat Angel, its name is this that's
Angel, yeah,
correct, Angel. Yeah,
yeah.
who was very
In the
lucky
office,
to be
though.
saved.
She's in the office, but I
Mm.
do have 3 cats in the major house at the moment, and then I've got a bunch of other cats in the rumpus room. I've got quite a few cats. I don't go looking for cats. I don't go.
Yeah.
They find me. They find me.
Oh,
A cat dies here,
yeah.
and on the same day, another one will come in and take their place. We'll just stray in and take their place. It's like, I don't know what it is. The cat universe is at work.
Yeah, yeah. They're picking up the vibration. Man down, I'll replace,
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool, man. They know they're obviously welcome there, Like
Mm.
cats are pretty tricky like that. I've I've got a cat, like I've got two cats that are my own, but there's a cat that lives on the street, and I'm always trying to get him to the vet, you know what I mean? Like and bring him in. But he's been here before I've lived here, and all the neighbors know him. And like you'll be driving down the street and he's like on his back on, like Morris is across the road's chair and Morris is patting him. And then the next day he's over at Frank's. And then a day later he's up on the veranda
Oh,
three doors down and stuff. And you do, and he's like, man, like he's not without a feed, let me tell you. You know what I mean? Like, and
well, you
plenty of
know what?
love.
That says a lot about your community.
Yeah,
If
yeah. No,
if they're all integrating and working together to make sure that this street cat, is being looked
yeah.
after and cared for, that says a
Yeah.
lot about the people who live around you.
Well, we all, if we're driving by, we always like, you seen Bob the last couple of days? It's like, yeah, he was over at Greg's house like yesterday morning, like, so Bob gets around, but everyone knows Bob. So it's like, I
Yeah,
think Bob's the king of the street, man, like, he lets other cats know too. Don't you worry about that in the middle of
oh,
the
I'm
night.
sure he's very territorial.
Oh man. Oh yeah. And then typical cat, like, hello, like, oh, you want
Yeah.
some food, mate, like, but always
Yeah.
at most
Does he let you pat him? Does he let you pat him?
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I
Yeah.
can pick him up. I don't know why. I'm the only one in the street that can pick him up. Like, everyone else pats him, and he's happy to, sit with them. But he like lets I pick him up and
Well,
give
maybe he
him
feels
cuddles and
something
stuff like
about
that.
your energy.
I don't know. I've always sort of been pretty good with animals. Like, years ago, I used to work as a removalist, and sometimes you'd go to houses and there'd be some pretty wild dogs at these houses,
Mm.
and they'd always send me to to the house because, like, for some reason, like, I'd
You
just
could
play
calm
with
them.
the animals for half hour or 45 minutes while the dudes were
Yeah.
doing the work. I've never been bitten or attacked by any
Oh,
animal.
that's great.
Yeah, yeah. The only one that's left me a little bit pale is the sheep encounter that I had when he screamed at me, But that's
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
That was just a one-off. We'll go with that. That
That's a
happens
one-off.
sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. With with excuse me, the all the phantom stuff. Like, what? Because I seem to remember, and I may be wrong here too, but now Eric Larson from the Savage Garden and stuff like that did
Savage Dragons.
um,
Yeah.
was had a character called Dart.
Correct.
Was it? Were you involved in that?
Yeah, that was going back to the late 90s.
Yeah, yeah. How
I
did that
was,
all come about? Because that's a memory of mine. I wasn't 100% sure, but while I was here, I'm like,
yeah,
that's Julie. That was Julie.
yeah. There was, I was in a creative team called Black Mermaid Productions at the time
Yeah,
with Bruce Love, who was a co-writer, and Joseph Zechariah, who was the illustrator.
yeah,
And we had just finished on Elf Quest, Wave Dancers, and that was quite contentious in the way in which we split up and we moved on. But Eric had liked what we had done, or what we had created, and he approached us and said, look, he'd like to do a mini series on his character Dart, and sort of like a bit of an origin story. He gave us a very specific brief. He said it had to actually show how she kind of discovered darts, and that became like her weapon of choice, and that how she got her name, because I think her real name was Jill. I can't quite remember her last name, but how she kind of got her superhero name. He wanted a barroom scene in it where she or somebody's attacked and she uses darts to fight them off. And he also wanted an alley scene, a dark, like a back alley kind of scene where she comes to help. So we got like a specific brief. So we pitched the story, and it was going back a bit, and then he said you can invent any other characters around it. But he also wanted the other part of the brief was that he wanted a challenge on her name, right? That a character was going to challenge her for her name,
Okay.
right? And the usage of dart. And so we came up with this story about this unscrupulous toy maker who works with his wife, and he just sits in the penthouse where she labors in the basement of this huge corporate building, and they were called Galb Toys, and where they came up with all these little toys and everything. But the executive, the real baddie, he wanted to start a new toy line, and he had noticed Dart in the news saving people, and so he decided to steal her name and also her image. So it's really interesting because it's that kind of idea is kind of ahead of its time, because now this happens with celebrity where people steal their name, or they hack their name, they start fake accounts and they steal their image, or or do all of that. And then the toy dude has this team of super villains who are like his, strong arms, who work for him. And in the meantime, there's this other group of superheroes that we invented who actually then fall in league and become allies with Dart. And then as she finds out what's happening, and she wants to take her name and her image back, and so then it ends up in this climax, where the baddies get their comeuppance. So that's really what it's about. So we had to follow a specific brief. We were a little bit ahead of our time because we actually had a gay superhero in there.
Yeah.
And that was like the mid-90s. I don't know how well that character was accepted.
Yeah.
So it was probably not your conventional superhero story. We had a lot of fun with it. Eric was absolutely brilliant to work with. Well, we're very grateful. There were 3 issues that came out. The first issue had 2 variant covers in it of it. So that's really that story. Yeah, that really covers that.
Yeah, no, that's cool because I mean, that you said he was cool to work with because I mean, I haven't read a lot of the Savage Dragon. There we go, talking about
Very,
band.
very easy to do. Very easy. Oh.
But yeah, they are. But I do know and I appreciate the fact that he does push the envelope with certain things. Do you know what I mean? Like to test the waters. And I think that's very brave. You know what I mean? Particularly back in the 90s, as you were just saying, like that sort of a superhero and storyline and that coming through. That's really cool, man. Because I remember, obviously, I grew up with like not so much DC. Dad was very Marvel. I went into, I was very big on Daredevil and Wolverine and the Uncanny X-Men, and then I disappeared down the Australian comic book and 2000 AD
Mm-hmm.
loophole, and a little bit of Image,
Yeah.
and I picked up a few Savage Dragons. I said it correctly this time. For all of
You
you
did.
out there, I have seen Savage Garden back in the day at the Townsville Entertainment Centre, and it was a lot better than I thought it would be. So there's a little piece of history for you. And yeah, I just, and credit to the man. I mean, what's he done now? 300 odd, of an independent comic book.
Wow.
That's amazing,
Incredible.
man. And he puts those things out. So,
Well,
good to hear.
I think the origin story of Image is really interesting, and very courageous. So
Oh, man.
full respect.
I agree. Yeah, I agree with that. You hear, I guess, conflicting stories that, Daniel Best would probably know the,
Yeah, I know
full
Daniel.
detail of the story.
Yeah.
Yeah, he knows all that stuff. But yeah, very, very, like you think about it, God, they were young, like what did I read the other day? Weirdly, that came up. Like Rob Liefeld was asked a question when he left Marvel to, to start Youngblood, and he was like 23 or something like that. And I'm like,
I know.
I read that, and I was like, 23, man. I didn't even.
I know. I didn't grow up, I don't think, till I was about 33, and that's only that level of growing up. There's like an additional level of growing up beyond that.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't grow up until a couple of years ago, Julie. I just kept the party humming, mate. It's.
I hear you. I hear you.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
Truthfully, I think that a lot of people in comics, they keep their young, childlike spirit, and it keeps them young physically. It keeps them young mentally. And I'm not saying that they're immature. I'm saying that it's, and I think this childlike part or ego state or whatever, like, really drives the storytelling as well.
I would agree with you there, because I find that a lot of, well, basically, people that watch this show regularly would know, so I'll leave it at this. But I'm an alcoholic and, a varying drug addict for many years, and have been sober. I'm into my third year of sobriety and stuff. And
well done.
Thank you. It's been a battle, let me tell you, but got there. I'm getting there every day.
We'll have a chat after.
Okay, no worries. And I've found that creativity has saved me more. Like, I've always been creative. I've always drawn since I was a little boy, and I found that throughout the journey so far, everyone always says, like, seems that people complicate everything, and the simple thing was to come back to the path of what you know. And I guess it was, for me, it was to be that little boy that was experiencing the beauty of, like comic books and, in the storytelling and the fairy tales and all that. So I guess in a strange way, I'm simplifying my life now, so that I'm obviously of a mature, I'm 46 now, so, but I'm devolving back into trying to appreciate life from a childlike perspective. And instead of looking at things like work, I look at them as play, play things I've got to do. I'm trying to, look at things like that. And I found a lot of people in the comic book community are very similar, like that, similar humor. They like, these things boil, down from a thing long kept within, and that's one of my little pet hates, is like when when you're a kid and you're sitting there drawing and stuff, everyone, or you're writing and that, everyone's like, nah, look at it, like, it's beautiful. you know, like that sort of thing. You should keep doing that. But it's the minute you get 15, you know, you hit like 15 or 16, you know, it's like you need to get a job, put that shit, you know, that stuff down, you know, go out and do that.
Oh,
Like,
Lee. There's several generation of comic creators and other creatives who've gone through that. I've gone through it. You know, Bruce Love, my co-writer from many years ago, he when he was at school, I hope he is okay with me telling this story. He when he was 16, he saw the career advisor at school, who was the social science teacher, and she said, "No, what do you want to do when you leave school?" He says, "I want to be an actor." And she laughed in his face and said, "That's hilarious. Now, what do you really want to do?" And he was so confused. He left school, didn't go on, went and worked in a bank for 5 years. He was good at his job, but he was totally miserable. And I said, "Look, start off with amateur theatre. Go off and join which he did, and he loved it. And then he went and did a 2-year full-time acting course and ended up, you know, doing all this children's theatre and some television and all kinds of theatre. And then he moved off into a different direction. But he brought all his acting skills with it, and producing and directing skills, which were transferable to the other jobs. There are so many lost people out there who were discouraged from pursuing their true calling, their creative calling. And it makes me sad. And I could have been one of them. I worked in retail for 3 years because I was pushed into it. I hated it. I learned a lot, hated it, until I finally went off uni and did the uni course in professional writing that I always wanted to do. So I feel for you. I know what you're talking about. And there's a lot of others out there who've gone through this as well.
Yeah, I know. It is sad because, look, don't get me wrong. I was very lucky that, obviously, from what I've told you about Dad was a marathon runner. Dad did a lot of things, you know, like he was, you know, like, man, smoked 40 cigarettes a day. They said he couldn't run a marathon. So within 12 months, he ran a marathon, you know, like when he wanted to, he was very determined, you know. My mother is the most determined woman I've ever met, man. You know what I mean? Just the foundation, you know, you do what you want to do. Still to this day supports me through hell and high water that I've put her through, you know what I mean? Like, and she's right there. And not once have I ever felt, even from my family, a holdback on being creative. I think.
Oh, sorry, I must have misread that.
No, it's cool. It's cool. Like, not from my mum or dad, but I guess from people around me, like school, you know, teachers, like you were saying, the curriculum, even as you get older and you go into like a society, you know, deeper into the societal sort of thing, jobs, and, you know, you meet more people, and you know, it's a little bit frowned upon because, I mean, like, you know, yeah, man, there's nothing more. I could sit here and have this conversation with people. Like, I love Chinwags because it's like-minded people talking about cool stuff, you know. You know, when you go to those parties, man, and you sit there and some dude walks up to you and he goes, "No, I bought that house in, you know, like 1995." And you go, "Oh, yeah, that's cool." And you go, "Ah, that made $20,000 last year." It's like, "Oh, kill me, man." You know, like, that sort of people. And I just, due to circumstances and relationships and stuff, was around a lot of those type. And, you know, you sort of feel like you have to fit in. And I guess I tried to assimilate into that. And through that, I felt like I was always seeking something myself, it turns out. And that self was not being allowed out. And since sobriety, I guess, and what we were talking about earlier, which, I mean, maybe this will probably segue into it, and through spiritual and self, you know, like healing and endeavors and stuff and such, you tend to revert back to the things, you know, that you were, I guess, before certain things sink their teeth into you. You know what I mean? Like, so, you know, like there's a healing process and that comes through it. And we were speaking earlier before, and I know you don't mind me asking you about this, but with Now, I'm a meditator.
Yeah.
I have studied and been taught transcendental meditation. So I practice Maharishi Mahesh Yogi's technique, and I was taught by my teacher, and I practice that twice a day for 20 minutes. I have found that through my sobriety and my healing process, that has, I guess, given me an overall sense of clarity and balance across all fields, emotional and creative as well. But the one thing I've found with it is the creative side of things has like really exploded, man. It's like,
Absolutely.
and you practice your own mindful technique. Do you find that helps you with your creativity?
Yes, absolutely. I was always very creative, like fully on tap with creativity up to the age of 17.
Yeah.
And that's because, you know, uh, up to the age of 16, in year 10, we were still doing creative writing, doing some art, all that kind of stuff. But when I went to do the HSC, we had to switch parts of our brain to essay writing. And so I remember the first couple of essays, and the English teacher said to me, "Oh, you're actually writing creatively, but you need to be writing logically and putting your case in." And so then I had to switch and work like that. And then I went and did 3 years of management studies as well. So it was all report writing. And so by the time I actually got to uni to do the very thing I really wanted to do, which is professional writing at University of Canberra, for the first year I really struggled, and I just didn't understand what was going on, why I was working so hard at what had always come naturally to me. It's just that for 5 years I hadn't done anything creative. And so I had writer's block essentially. And I just couldn't understand it because it had always been so organic and just always sitting there. And the stuff I was generating was like really cliched and dry and lacked substance, and it was forced and all of that. And so one day I thought, I had already been dabbling in hypnosis and self-hypnosis. I was fascinated with it. So one day I put myself into a state of hypnosis, and then I had to write a short story. And I actually kind of gave myself the suggestion that it was already completely written, and all I have to do is formalize it by actually typing it out. You've just faded away, Lee. You've frozen. Are you there? Sorry, can you hear me?
Am I back yet?
Yeah.
I can hear you. So I hope I am back. Because yes?
Yeah, you are indeed.
All right.
So I gave myself that suggestion. It was a very difficult story to write because I had a really good idea, but it was quite difficult to write. But when I kind of brought myself out of it, because I had imagined it was already there on paper and already written and in the computer and everything. But then it just came out. And when I handed it in, I actually got my first high distinction. And it was kind of shocking to me. I didn't quite understand the mechanism. But then I started doing more and more. And the mechanism really is that I was operating from beta brainwave activity, which is what you do when you're fully awake and aware. It's like 28 cycles a second. But if you're operating from that, you can actually block off the door between your mind and your subconscious, your conscious mind and your subconscious. And you actually have to drop your brainwaves into alpha brainwave, and then that opens the door up so you can access all this incredible information inside that it underpins all your creativity. So by using hypnosis, I would actually drop into that, and then after that, the writing came easy. There was one other time I had uh, some writer's block, and that was just post COVID. I had actually caught COVID. I got through it pretty quickly. It was gone in 3 days, but it did affect. I was very tired for 3 days. It was after I went to one of the conventions. For 18 months, I had been wearing masks and sanitizing and had hardly gone out. And then I went to a convention and I thought, all right, there is distance between me and the people here. Maybe that's enough distance so I took the mask off, because your customers, or the people you want to speak to, they actually, you could see that the mask was like a barrier between you. But I also talked to all the other comics people on either side, and we'd be like face to face, and I didn't even consider that maybe they had COVID, but I ended up with COVID. And I just felt very tired for 3 days. I didn't really get anything else, but my concentration was affected a little bit, and and it was hard for me to tap in and write again. So I just had to find my rhythm again and use a lot of hypnosis. And when I was going through doing a lot of work on myself too, and I was dealing with some stuff that creativity was just dampened a little bit. But with the self-hypnosis, I was liberated again. Now I'm really pleased with everything that's going now, because it's like I've got access to stuff I never had before. It's like, what? Whoa, right? I'm dreaming on a level I've never dreamt before. Like really full on, multi-dimensional, interplanetary, surreal kind of things that is like, whoa. And the observer in me looks like, sucks all this in. It's like, I can use this in this story here, or I can use it here. So yes, the tool for me, self-hypnosis, is the tool to undo writer's block, or just to keep me in that alpha brainwave, which is where you want to go to access all the full expanse of your creativity and beyond, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Well, it does absolutely to me, Julie. If Shane can bring up that last comment that just popped up before from, I believe, the person saying KJB, good evening. Evening, appreciate the insights of behind the scenes with your writing, drawing, etc. The meditation and dealing with writer's block is very interesting. One of the things, KJB, one of the things that when I discovered ages ago that Julie was into mindful techniques, I did want to bring this up, like on a chinwag, and Julie was gracious and comfortable enough to discuss it, as you can see, because what I'm going to agree with Julie here, because to anyone that hasn't, it's a case of, I completely understand what Julie's talking about, because with my time of meditation and what it's done for me and the clarity it has provided me, it has also done things that, and this is for me and what it's done for my artwork and writing. I see a lot of Facebook posts from other creators and artists and stuff, and in varying groups. I'm not going to pinpoint anyone. I don't want to, at all, because it's not throwing stones. This is a personal thing. It's just an observation that I've made. A lot of people seem to struggle and have, I guess, like, they're nervous about their artwork. They don't feel like their writing's the best, and getting it out there and stuff. I also felt like that. But one thing that meditation and being more mindful has taught me, in bringing a balance and a clarity to myself emotionally, and just clear, is the fact that meditation for me has taken away things, and it's taken away anxieties, it's taken away negativities, it's taken away fear. And the fear doesn't go away overnight, but it slowly is, like clearing away. And through those things going away, it's allowed me to have a far more clear vision of what I want to do art and creative wise. It may not be for everyone. It certainly, may not be for everyone. But for me, I believe it has worked amazingly well. It was the final catalyst for me in very much becoming sober. There were a few iffy parts last year where I was teetering, and when that was the decision made to follow that practice and that pursuit, I have no doubt in my mind that I will be sober for the rest of my life. I'm very happy doing exactly what I'm doing and heading in the direction I'm coming. And I certainly hope that, that shows for people. I just want people to understand that there's a power in it. It makes you feel good, and it just makes you see the world a bit better. You see a little bit more magic, One story I'll tell you, if Julie, while we're talking about, and we're talking because it's just chinwag, the first time is a far bigger build-up, but I went on a mission, one of my road missions, to see this teacher. It just so happened that she was going to be in this very tiny beach at the edge of the Daintree. So off I went, and see, this is how chinwags and the fluidity.
Is this a teacher from your past or a teacher for the future that you wanted to meet?
Teacher for the future. To practice transcendental meditation, you have to go and do a 4-day thing with, I guess a course is a way of describing it, but you have to be taught by someone that is a teacher of it. And the lady that I got there's no one in North Queensland. And it seemed like, wow, I'm going to miss this. And it was now. You have those moments in your life where you're just like, it's got to be now or I'm never going to do it, I need it now. I get a phone call. Oh, hello, my name's Valerie. See, you can't get to, to Brisbane to do this course. I'm actually going to be on the go in this little beach in Port Douglas next week. Would you like me to teach you how to do, transcendental meditation? What? And I rang her up and I'm like, is this serious? And she's like, yeah, absolutely. I'm actually heading up that way for a holiday, and I'm more than happy for you to, come. And I was like, right, all right. So anyway, I go on this, okay.
Yeah.
I'm going, how about it? This is like science, And this is a true story, man. There's more details in it. I'll get more to the nitty gritty. Blew my mind, man. And so I head up, and when you go to Port Douglas, if you've ever been from Cairns to Port Douglas, there's a coastal road, and it's like that, and it's drop off. So it's, like some crazy stuff, but it's cool. So this beach that I went to didn't have a sign or anything. It was down a dirt road. And I thought it was going to be closer to Cairns, and it ended up being closer to Port Douglas, at the base of the Daintree. So anyway, I'm racing. Suddenly there's this dirt down this dirt road, and I get there, and there's these dudes sitting around in tinnies, smoking cigarettes, drinking 4X and stuff. You know what I mean? And I'm thinking and a shack, and I'm like, whoa, this could be Wolf Creek stuff. You know what I mean? I may never come back. You know what I mean? Should I be writing a note, man? You know what I mean? Like my last will. And then I thought, nah, I'll just go down this road. So I head down this road, and I've never ever talked to this woman before, but she just given me this address. This is my address. Okay. So I roll in there, and there's a lady, and she's standing at the front of this house. And I pull up, and she looks at me, and she goes, are you Lee? And I said, yes, I'm Lee. And she's like, I'm Valerie. She's like, park up, come in. And I was like, okay. So, and we had to take 5 things. I had to take 5 things. I had to take 5 offerings, a white handkerchief, a bunch of flowers, and 3 pieces of fruit. I didn't know what this was all about, but I went with it, man. And this was the first step of the journey to like understanding like the magic that follows. You know what I mean? Like it's crazy. And so I go in there and I can't really go into the processes of it and everything because there's a lot of things that happen and that, but I was welcomed and discussed and talked about things and blah, blah, blah. And then I was sat down and I had my first lesson in meditation and how to quiet my mind and begin learning the techniques of this particular meditation. And I, boom,
Yeah.
couldn't believe it. And she's like, you can come, you know, gently, and I'm out of it. And the really crazy part is, Julie, everything was brighter. And I went down to a beach with her. It was like right out the front door, obviously. And there was birds chirping in trees that were like that big that I was seeing from like, you know, 20, 30 meters away that I would have missed otherwise. And like everything was bright, sun was bright, wind was bright, just things was glistening and stuff like that. And man, lift, like I was like, whoa, you know, like this is insane, you know, like it's like my brain had just like, you know, like some, I don't know, just trapdoor just opened, you know, and that was my first, experience. And I spent several days with Valerie, and amazing lady, very peaceful, calm. Nothing much seemed to bother her and stuff like that, you know, wise, I guess, in a strange way. And I just continued to practice on, and that's what I wanted to do. And yeah, it does, man. It just makes a little difference. But people are going to probably think, you know, like, wow, man, you know, like Lee's out there. But I'm not really. I just believe in it. Like I possibly didn't beforehand. Synchronicities and things got me there and pushed me off, and it just happened.
Yeah.
And it's just funny how, yeah, it's just funny how things like that can happen, man. And yeah, I don't know, man. It's just made me really, like, I don't want to be the best. I don't see any competition in creativity at all. I think creativity you should only be in competition with yourself in terms of what you want to produce and things, you know, like the argument of, you know, he's better, she's better, it's just non-existent when it comes to a subjective, you know, thing like art, you know, like be true to yourself, have your own voice, put it out there. And people are gravitated to it. But the best thing is if you get it out there, you don't have to live in fear. You can be proud because you took that mark, man. You know what I mean? I got it out there. You know what I mean? Like no one can take that away from you. Yeah, check it out if you want to or not. You know, like but I'm glad that came up. Thanks, mate. That was awesome to hear. I have been starting meditation last year to deal with life's bullshit and tribulations, and I swear it has helped this old comic nerd deal with quite a bit. Well, mate, I'm glad my story resonated with you because, yeah, it's keep going. It gets better. Like, trust me, it gets better. Like, it's pretty amazing. Julie can tell you that because, you know.
Truthfully, when you were telling me that story, I was seeing it all in a comic book in my mind. I was seeing it in comic panels in my mind. Like I could see I could see you on the beach, the shack, the offering, everything. I think you know, I think maybe it's something for you to explore in a slice of life comic. To tell that story in a slice of life comic.
Yeah.
Have a think about it. I could see it all, you know.
I'm glad you said that because there is a huge part of me that has thought about that. And again, here you go. It's been in the back of my mind, but it's not. I guess that's the first time I've ever really spoken to anyone about it in sort of that sort of a detail, like in a live stream, you know, as opposed to like in a private conversation. It was a very interesting story to go through, full of synchronicities, directions from people from my past that had just popped up to remind me that, hey, go that way, and things like that. Like, it was a real man, it was fully like
Were they
spiritual, and
people that you had unfinished business with?
as they were. Yes, they certainly
There's a
were.
When you're on the path, there's a period of time where all these people that you've got unfinished business with will start to pop up, like in
Yeah,
this short space of time.
yeah,
And that's the opportunity to like wrap it all up
yeah,
so you can move on.
yeah. That's, you know what, Julie, that's exactly what happened. It was things that I'd been carrying a really long time that
Mhm.
were all tied into, like, obviously drinking, and, you know, like not accepting certain things and having doubts about myself, which came through my creativity and my life and me as a person. All these things were all tied together. And suddenly it was just like, bang, this person. Okay, wow, I haven't talked to you for 10 years, but we need to work this out. You know what I mean? Like, and it was all
Yeah.
done amicably, peacefully. It was like, just things were just, it was weird, man. It really
Mm.
was. And I thank you for that, because I wondered if that was meant to like happen. It just seemed to happen in a really strange
Yeah,
short
I went
period
through
of
it as
time.
well. In
Yeah,
my early 20s, I went through that. And all these people I had issues with, like a teacher in primary school that was very sadistic. Um, she came for whatever reason to visit my parents' house when I was there. And when I knew she was coming, it's like I reverted to a 9 or 10-year-old. I went and
yeah,
hid in the bathroom. And then it's like a voice inside of me said, this is actually an opportunity to heal and confront, not necessarily to confront her about what she had done, but to actually look at her in the eye and see her for what she is. And I kind of
mm,
forced myself out of there, went and said hello, and I looked at her, and from the perspective of a 21, 22-year old, and I just thought, you're absolutely pathetic.
mm,
Um, which is not a very generous thing, but it was suddenly uh, for you, it was like the thought was that if you would be so cruel to children,
mm,
really it says everything about you and none of those children, including myself. And then I felt this as if I was empowered by that recognition, and I didn't
yep,
have to deal with her again. I mean, I can still
yep,
go back and feel the feelings and access the stuff,
yep,
but I don't think of her. It's like you're gone. I don't have to deal with you. You're out. Does that make
yeah.
sense?
That does make sense. Yeah,
Yeah.
completely. Yeah, it's, man, like, this. See, this is another one of these fluidity things, man. Like, I was meant to talk to you about this stuff, because these
Yeah.
are the things that I think about, man. Like, on my path now, and like, uh, like
Lee,
when you were talking.
I'd be talking to Bruce Mutard about if you are going to contemplate about doing a slice of life
Mm,
story about what you've just outlined. I'd be talking to Bruce Mutard. He's the king of slice of life in Australia, I think.
yeah,
Um,
right.
he's in Western Australia, and he, I've got the highest respect for Bruce.
Yep,
He's very introspective, and a lot of that introspection comes out in his work. For example, Bully Me, a book that came out a number of years ago. It's fantastic. So anyway, just a hint.
yeah. No, thank you. I'm very grateful for that. I will. I know of the man. I haven't met the man, or had a chat to him, but maybe he'll like to come on a Chinwag one day. Like,
Maybe,
yeah,
maybe.
you never know, mate. You never know. With, like when you're talking about with meditations and stuff, like your dreams become more vivid, and this is also like tying in with creation and stuff, because and creativity in general. Did you often find that I was never particularly, I didn't really remember a lot of dreams. I seem to remember a lot of traumatic ones, but never really the fantastical or the ones that I possibly should have enjoyed, And did you find, as you were becoming more mindful, you were finding it a little bit easier to remember your dreams, or enjoying them more? They were becoming a little bit more lucid, vivid, like perhaps.
I've always had very intricate dreams, even when I was a kid, like
Yeah,
really, really complex dreams. But there's certainly in the last few years, as the more work I've done on myself, the more access I have to some other deeper subconscious parts. I don't know how they're all connected. I
yeah,
don't question that. I just accept it.
yep,
And there's, like, I had the most incredible dream last night. In a way, it was like I was another person. I was who went through a supernatural event, but I was both observer, but kind of in this man's body, experiencing this supernatural event. And it's like, where in the hell did that come from? It and some of them inform my writing as well. I do remember a few years ago, this is going back to about 2006, I was in a comics group in Sydney, and there was one of the artists there said, "Oh, Julie, I'd like to work with you on a story." I said, "All right, well, what do you want it to be?" And she said, "A horror." And I was going, "Oh, shit." Uh, I was so scared, I tell you, because it's completely out of my comfort zone. I said, "Well, what is it? Tell me some stuff that you'd like to have in it." And then she gave me, I said, "Give me a list of images that you'd like to see in the story." So she gave me, half a dozen images. And I was like, "Oh, holy, how am I going to do this?" Because I write about mermaids and the human experience through mermaid stories, right? You know,
yeah,
how am I going to write this horror thing? And then one day, shortly after, I dreamed this dream, and there was the whole horror story in the dream. And I quickly woke up and took all these notes. And then in an hour, I had the whole outline for the story. Then I had to go away and script it, but I had the whole outline, knew exactly what happened, had all the imagery, I had all the climax, everything. That's a yet unpublished story because I've expanded it to 32 pages.
yeah.
But I think I'm looking for an artist right now. There's a particular one overseas that I would like to work for on this, and it's truly I shocked myself because it's truly, I think, one of the best stories I've ever actually written, and I have no idea where it came from. Absolutely no idea where it came from. So that's the thing. You can access parts of yourself or
No,
that you wouldn't. Yeah, best work always done during sleep. You
yeah,
know it, and we know it. Yeah.
that's
Um,
right.
you've just got to kind of hand yourself over
Yeah,
to your creative subconscious part
yep.
and get your logical mind out of the way. One of the things I used to teach this comics mastermind course about how to
Yeah,
write for comics.
tell us about that. That's something that's super impressive as well. While
Yeah,
we're on,
I'll tell you about that. But one of the things I used to say to the students is that when you're writing, don't avoid you start off like wanting to get the beginning and moving linearly towards the end.
yep,
But I think there's a point you actually have to let that go because your creativity does not work in a linear fashion.
yep,
So sometimes there was one book like Elfin, the very first book that I wrote of the 6-part series. I had no idea what the first opening scene was. I had no idea. All I knew is it had to accomplish, there were about half a dozen goals. I had to set up the hero. I had to plant some stuff for future storylines. I had to set up a dynamic between two characters. I had to set up the location, had to do all this stuff, but I had no idea how to do it. So I wrote everything from the second scene onwards, and then suddenly, right at the end, because your subconscious works, there's a solution. It's problem solving. While you're working on something else, it's problem solving. By the time I got to the end, the whole first scene was there, and bang, you go in. So just trust your creativity and your subconscious. And if it starts throwing a bit of dialogue out, that's not going to appear until issue 2, page 6. Quickly write it down, because because the subconscious will just throw stuff out at you, and you have to be able to record it quickly, so that it'll all string together at the end. It'll all come together. It's like putting a jigsaw puzzle together. You want to get all the frame done first, but sometimes there'll be a little section in the middle that you'll suddenly put together very quickly. But by the end of it, it'll all come together. So just free yourself up from the idea of writing in a linear fashion, and just let whatever happens, but be sure to capture it either on your phone, record it, put it notes on your phone, keep a notebook with you all the time, so you're actually changing it to a material form. The worst thing is when you're going to sleep at night, you start getting all your ideas and you just want to go to sleep, and you go, oh, I'll remember in the morning. You don't remember it in the morning. You have to get the information down then, because you'll lose it. So sorry, that the big rant, but
it was perfect, man. It was. I actually see a real. I collect a lot of my ideas for writing similarly. Jots of dialogue and stuff. That's why I've got notepads everywhere, and they're all. I know where everything is. I'm a weird filer. But I find that my art is also the same. I can work out stories and lay out the images and stuff and the paneling and things. But I tend to find that things are really organic when you're in the flow in particular. You know, you may get 6 panels that you've worked on, but then these other ideas will come in where I could flesh that out. And then that suddenly becomes a giant splash page with, you know, like something totally different. And you just go with it, man. You know, like that's... You know, like that's why it's like I always laugh with everyone. It's like I hate. I'm not a deadline dude. I'll treat my artwork like I'm painting. So like it just takes as long as it is. It's more like the you know, the enjoyment of it and the process. But I like doing things like that too, man. I'm not quite as regimented as some, but everyone has their different techniques.
Yeah, everyone's.
You know, whatever works. It's like. It's cool, you know, as long as it's good stuff and you're happy with it. That's what I like. But before I get on to your like talk to you about your like your online thing, I'll tell you the last dream. I've had more, but I'm going to tell you how weirdly vivid everyone out there, and then I'll stop so you get a little chunk of my mind here. This is about probably 3-4 weeks ago. I've had a pretty traumatic couple of years, all right? I won't go into too many details, but, you know, like things have happened, so you go through a bit of stuff. So I wake up and I'm in the, well, I'm not awake, subconsciously wake up, and I'm in this honeycomb sand cave, right, with, you know, like rippled and everything, but it's a sand cave. And there's this like Egyptian dude at the end of a tomb, like not a tomb, but you know, the things they have, like the bodies in a sarcophagus, and the lid's pulled back, and he's got a baby by the leg, and I'm like standing there, and he's like, unwrap this, and I'm like, and he like uses a staff and he flicks back the bandages, and this mummy's face is a lady, but she's just recently passed, but she's covered in leprosy and things like that, And I was like, I'm not touching that, man, like, and you got to put the baby down. And he started laughing, and then everything goes a bit hazy, as I'm not really quite sure what his purpose was about this. But I basically discovered that where it comes sort of back into recollection is that the baby was my child, and my child and I were going to be used to have this super leprosy from this Egyptian priest, like, I guess, be the guinea pigs. And the the passed away individual was my wife, and subsequently my son, a child, and I were covered in this illness. I did the only thing I could, was to stop the dude's evil, so I killed him in a rather tormented way. I set fire to the cave that had all these totems and jewels and stuff in it. And then the only thing I knew what to do is that I was dead and my child was dead. And then I ran out of the cave as it was on fire, and I jumped off the cliff with both of us. And then I woke up, and I wrote that down. But I can't remember the middle part. Yeah, but I just can't remember the middle part. But these are the sort of dreams that I woke up. If you believe in astrology and all this numerology and stuff too, I woke up at 3:33, and I looked at. I was like, okay, that's weird, but I wrote that down. But I have lots of dreams like that now since meditation.
That's full on. That's full on, and that's very powerful. It's very evocative, and it's great if you convert that into a scene in a story. My goodness me, that would
I'll be honest with you, I had to have a cigarette after that. Like I did. I woke up and
I'm exhausted just listening to it.
Yeah. But this is what runs through my head, man. I don't know. There we go. Like for everyone out there in the world, this is what chinwags are. But anyway, on a lighter note, let's move out of the honeycomb depths of ancient Egypt and whatever that story was, which possibly will be looked at further down the track. And tell us about your classes that you used to hold, mate.
I mean, people can still access them, but they're all recorded. I set up Comics Mastermind in 2016, and we ran a number of different courses. Jason Franks did the mechanics of visual storytelling, which was split into two 90-minute sessions, and that's about anyone who's coming in as a beginner into comics. It's all the technical stuff you need to learn about, everything from lettering to word balloons and, how to lay out a script, all that kind of thing. And then I ran an 8-week course, which was, I can't even remember now. It's like I haven't taught it for 2 years now, or 1 year, whatever. That one was 8 weeks. So we go into everything from idea generation to understanding the categories and formats in comics, because you have to actually, if you are given a brief, you have to understand the category. Is it an original graphic novel? Is it a comic book series? You have to understand the container in which your story has to fit. If it's a series, you have to understand that you have to put a cliffhanger at the end of every single, issue, so that your reader can move through the story until the end, that kind of thing. So we covered all that. Then we looked at all the word picture combinations and all of that kind of stuff. And then we look at the structure, or look at, how to structure comics for micro comics or macro comics, that they're my terms for like the more epic stuff. And we look at characterization. There was one unit which is split into two, so we spent 3 hours on it, which is called Show and Don't Tell, which is about how to actually, instead of telling in words, you actually show concepts through illustration, and go through that very intricately and look at symbolism, color symbolism, all kinds of things. And then we culminate in like a project analysis where I take one of my projects, 48-page project, and break it down bit by bit, talk about the thought processes, talk about the mistakes I made in it, talk about the things I got right, and, you know, the entire thought process behind it, so that you can kind of jump into a writer's mind and then learn from their mistakes and learn from their triumphs as well along the, so all of that was in 8 weeks. And then we had a lot of master classes, just one off. We had Thomas Campi. Have you interviewed Thomas?
No.
You know Thomas? He's an Italian graphic novelist who's world renowned and won multiple awards. He lives in Australia. He emigrated here about 10 years ago.
No.
Do you know Oz Comics?
Oz
Carmichael?
Comics with Nat Carmichael.
Yeah. Or is it comic? Yeah. So one of Thomas's books has come out, which is all about Superman. That's come out through Nat Carmichael. But find Thomas on Facebook because his stuff is incredible. But he did a masterclass on how to work in European comics. And we had a lot of other. Colleen Doran came and did a masterclass where she broke down the Troll Bridge. Because do you know Colleen from in America?
Of her work. Yeah. I know Colleen. I believe if this is correct, I don't know her personally, but at the time Todd McFarlane left Spider-Man and Eric Larson was about to take over Spider-Man, I believe from memory, Colleen was the lady that did the in-between issue of that. And I read an article once that they were big shoes to fill, but it taught her a lot. And I noticed she's had a successful career, and I noticed that she popped up on a Phantom cover maybe 12 months ago, 14 months ago. And I wondered if,
She did, because she said she hasn't got that in her repertoire and she wanted to do one for Frew. She did one of those, but she's won several Eisner Awards as well because she's one of Neil Gaiman's favourite artists. So they work quite closely on projects. So she's adapted 3 of his short stories into graphic novels, and currently she's working on Good Omens, the Good Omens graphic novel, which was written by Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett, and it was the biggest. It was a Kickstarter that raised the most money ever, like over $3 million.
Wow.
So there were people all over the world who ordered this. So she's currently working on that. But one of the masterclasses she did was actually taking one of the stories that she did for Neil Gaiman, Troll Bridge, and actually breaking it down and talking about all the research and the, her process as well. So we've had quite a few of those, but the last lot we did was I noticed that when I was reading a lot of the Australian Society of Authors has a mentorship program, and I had been reading some of the submissions that came in for that, and going back a few years, and I'd been reading a lot of other submissions elsewhere and pictures, and I noticed that a lot of beginners actually don't necessarily understand genre as well as they should. So a lot of projects were coming through, and in the first 6 pages there were like 6 genres in there. So we did a series, one which was Daniel Best actually um, put together, which was one on the conventions of the superhero genre.
Yep.
Jason Franks did one on the conventions of the horror genre. I did one on fantasy, and Bruce Mutard did one on slice of life. So
Yep.
but I had so much. We all, as a team, had so much creative work on that. It was just competing. The teaching was competing too much with that. So at the end, not at the end of last year, but the end of 2022, I made an announcement that if anyone wanted the content, they could just purchase the recordings. We weren't doing any more live training. All the
Yep.
materials go with the recordings. So
Yep.
there's exercises and practical exercises that you can do. Those are still marked. If anyone comes in and buys the recording, we'll send it all out. If they want it feedback, they can just send it back, and then we'll supply the feedback and everything. The only thing is it's not live anymore. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I think that, man, that's fantastic because, again, you do read a lot of people just starting aren't 100% sure of, and I had, I, because man, that's a good crew, and you've got like a good lot of things for people to start, foundational stuff from,
It's
people that
all
know what they're
foundational
doing.
stuff. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
man. Like, because I had was talking to Jason Paulos about 12 months ago on a
I
Chinwag,
love
and
Jason. I get on very well with him.
champion, man. What a champion he is.
That
Um,
guy, I have to tell you a story, right? I
yeah,
just
yeah.
have to.
Oh, please. Yeah,
Many years ago, when Black House Comics was operational and Baden
yeah,
Kurgan was running it.
yeah. With Eek and their little the Sherlock Holmes comics and
Yeah,
stuff
yeah,
like
yeah.
that. Yeah,
He said, because Jason he was doing Eek there.
yeah,
And Baden said to me one day, Joy, Jason is like incredible. I'll just kind of be in discussion with him and talk about this idea for a cover. And then I come into work the next morning, the whole cover's there. It's all finished, right? The whole thing is finished like in less than 24 hours. And I remember Glenn Ford telling me the same thing, because of course Jason did a lot of work on the Phantom as well.
yeah,
I
yeah,
don't know what it is about his brain, but he can generate artwork so quickly, and
yeah.
like really accomplished artwork. So I've had some good chats with Jason. He's a good guy.
Yeah, he is, man. I've had lots of good chats with him too. He's a funny man too, but he knows his stuff.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
One of the things that he said to me in that Chinwag, and I thought it was notable because it was a mistake that I made when I started, because obviously I just did it from home and it was something I grew up with. And my background story is, my dad died and I wanted to do an ode to dad. And then, this thing just became bigger than what it was. So I learned
Mm.
by myself and I didn't have anyone to reach out to, like being
Yeah.
in North Queensland. And since I've come into the community and being able to meet people and talk to them and stuff, and meet Jason and like Mr. Challoner and like yourself and varying other people to get help and bits and pieces of knowledge and stuff. Jason brought up at the time, he said, like, everyone needs a mentor. When you start getting into this, the best thing you can do is have someone to talk to about, like, your art. Am I heading in this direction? Think about that, like, mate, pick up on that, like, you're getting better, like things like that. And I think that anyone that's out in those rural areas that can't access, like getting to conventions and that, a lot of things like what you've created there, Julie, and the other people who were with you, would sound to me like they'd be a great starting point for anyone, like to
Yeah. Well,
have a look at.
we had Marcelo Bayers doing art direction, or
Mm,
giving art feedback on some of the submissions that came through Comics Mastermind.
yeah,
And there was a lot of support in that regard. But I I think the people who really appreciate all of the mentorship stuff is not younger people, the 18, this is going to be a controversial statement, sorry. When I started Comics Mastermind, I thought that our major customer base would be like 18 to 35, and I was completely wrong.
Mm.
It was more 30 to 60 or 35 to 60.
Yeah.
So, and who I think the 18 to 30 group went online and got a lot of their stuff online.
Yeah.
I think they worked a lot in some, groups and things, but most of the people who came through and did the courses were in the 30 to 60 plus age group. And they like knuckled down and did a lot of the assignments and things like that, took it quite
Yeah.
seriously. I'm not saying that the younger ones didn't, but it was just a different approach. It was a completely different approach.
Yeah, for
So
sure. Do you reckon that might have something to do with what we were talking about before? How, like when you do get to that, say 30 age, you do start having a little bit of a, like I should have, given that a shot. That's where my heart is, you know what I mean? And I might have a little dabble and see if I can learn some more and get back into that
yeah,
field, Because,
that could be part of it. Yeah, I think there's lots of reasons,
yeah,
and I'm not. This is not a message of condemnation in any way. It was just that I suppose I had number one, I didn't do any kind of market research. I made a supposition about this. So, but number two, I think it's because between the ages of 18 and 30 is where I would have needed it the most.
yeah,
And I went seeking that help, certainly through uni and doing a lot of courses and things.
yeah,
So, and I thought that a lot of other people might have the same mindset, but I think they had other priorities. And I think that with the clients that did come in, they were really wanting to, experiment in the form and play around in the form and see whether or not it was a match for their skill set. They were
yeah,
either very devoted and passionate about it or wanted to see whether or not it would suit their skill set. Because sometimes you can't, if you're jumping from other mediums across,
yeah,
it's not necessarily an organic thing. Probably the closest would be screenwriters or
yeah,
storyboarders who could jump across, who could transition across because some of the skills are transferable. I think that picture book writers or illustrators can jump across because I did a picture book course a few years ago with a very, very famous and well known children's ex publisher but editor who specializes in that called Kathy Tasker through the
yeah,
Australian Writers Centre. And when I did the course, I found that there were some crossovers to comics, certainly about the show and don't tell, stripping back the dialogue and letting the art reveal the story. So there was
yeah,
crossovers. I think that children's picture book writers or illustrators could make the leap, but I think
yeah.
there are other mediums where it's a little bit more difficult and they have to really do a mental shift.
Mm. It's
Anyway.
it's it's not tricky. I mean, it should say it is tricky doing comic books. It's um, certainly not. I'm just going to bang out a comic book. You know what I mean? Like it's like there's a lot more
Yeah.
to it than that. Like this.
Yes, yes, yes. I said this to someone the other day. It's like going to the ballet, right? Um, there's these beautiful dancers leaping across the stage. You don't even hear them when they land. They look so delicate. They're so athletic. But no one actually appreciates or understands that it's taken 20 years of work to get to that point.
Yeah,
And writing a comic story can be exceptionally technical. And on a reading, oh look, this just flows. Look at the pacing. The story unravels. It's all great. It looks really easy, but it's not. There's a lot of finesse and a
Yeah.
lot of thought that goes into getting all those elements right. So yeah,
A lot of delicacy too, in terms of you got to have it's funny because talking to Rob O'Connor last night, when you first start
yeah.
drawing, or last week I should say, when you first start drawing, you're very focused on foregrounds. And it's not until you start developing comic books and understanding storytelling that you realize how important backgrounds are.
Oh
And that,
yeah.
and that those little drawings in the background are, mate, they are worth 1,000 words, and they can set up a story just
Absolutely.
a keen eye. I've always loved. I think one of the things that I loved about comics when I was growing up is that comics would keep me there, and I would analyze everything. I would reread them. I would analyze the background, how they flowed. I don't know. It's just a thing for me. And I'd follow the story and I'd swish and go like wind. Some of them that are done real well. You read some and they're like think, 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 clunky and, like an unoiled machine, but some just flow. And you'd feel like, man, you'd spend like half an hour, 45 minutes of just pure bliss, man, reading these comic books from cover to cover, and enjoying the ads in them, but I was a bit disappointed with no X-ray hands anymore after the 90s, like someone cottoned onto that, Julie, like bloody, taking my fun away. And, and then you sort of, I don't know. I fell out of comic books probably through the 2000s there. I was moving more into, like, obviously a very voracious novel reader as well, and started developing my own ideas. I had this weird idea. I don't know if this is correct, but when I first started developing Battle for Bustle and my own comic book stories, I had this notion in my head. I felt like I'd devoured as much as I could from things that influenced me, and I wanted to put that away and isolate myself for a period of time to see if I could translate what I'd learnt from reading and observation into what I could do into a comic book form, So I spent like 5 or 6 years just creating, I guess, in isolation, other than novels, no comic books. And then I like came out into this world where comic books were like, man, I just read that comic book in like 2 minutes. You know what I mean? Like like it just, it was weird, like that whole step there. I've always hated the fact that, comic books are looked at coffee table things. I think comic books should be looked at as beautiful pieces of art, man. To me, they're the perfect medium. They're lovely artwork, lovely story created. Storytelling is, like, is precise, a good one from a bad one, you know what I mean? Like it's no hiding it, you know what I mean? Like, and I think, it's very tricky. And anyone that says that comic books aren't tricky, man, like, give it a go, see how you go. That's what I reckon.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah, yeah, I
What
know.
I just want to like go back a couple of steps to what we just discussed.
Yep.
I have to add that when I started the Comics Mastermind courses and everything, part of the reason I also started it is because when I started in comics, certainly when I was doing my professional writing degree, which introduced you or introduced the students to all kinds of writing that you could make money from, comics were never, ever, ever mentioned. They weren't on anyone's radar.
Yep.
I stumbled on comics writing as a profession by accident. And I had no comic writing skills. There were no comics writing courses around. There were a few books around, I think, but I hadn't come across them. I think that Eisner had a couple of books, but certainly Scott McCloud's book wasn't out then. When Scott McCloud's book did eventually come out, it was a revelation to both people working in the industry and people who wanted to understand the medium. So we were just the only reason I actually could write comics was because I had studied television and screenwriting in my course. So I was able to take the concepts of screenwriting married with my understanding of comics from all the ones I read when I was a kid, and then actually translated into the real kind of published deal. So there was nothing around, absolutely nothing around when we really needed it. What people like Gary Chandler, Tim McEwen, or Jason Poulos, we all came from an era where there was no support. We had to make discoveries for ourselves. We had to make mistakes along the way, and just learn on the job. So part of why I started Comics Mastermind was just to help people, come through if they truly wanted to, learn about the comics medium, but kind of do it quickly without having to kind of scramble for themselves. Of course, the internet has opened up a world of possibility as well, in a way that just wasn't there, because the internet came into being in the late 1990s, World Wide Web. I was using emails in the maybe early to mid 1990s, but the World Wide Web, I remember when Black Mermaid got our first website, that was probably about 1998, 99. And then the World Wide Web started to explode after that. So where the internet has gone in the last 23, 24 odd years is like incredible. So there's so much access to stuff there now. I'm doing a lot of visual research at the moment. I used to use Wikipedia and do all this stuff. And then I went on to Pinterest the other day and I put in some keywords on it. And I've been looking for these specific traditional costuming from a particular region for a project that I'm working on with Marcelo Baez at the moment. And I had wanted to get this book, which is out of print and I can't find it anywhere. And I found a whole page of visual research on this costuming on Pinterest. And it's like, holy shit. Hallelujah.
It's like I found the jackpot. Exactly what I was looking for.
I did. I found the jackpot. So
I think one of the things that I've wanted to do with Chinwag, because this is the other thing too. Like when I started Chinwag, I really had no idea what I was doing with it. It was just a sort of thing to get a couple of mates together and have a long form talk, and then things started evolving in that. And as I guess I've become more confident with myself and had the changes and stuff, and I'm sort of realizing as well, talking to people is not just me learning, but then other people, from people like yourself and all the other people that have spoken and all the other guests. It's like people have sent me messages going, wow, it's so amazing to know, what Gary Chandler thought of this or Jason Poulos thought of that. I'd never thought about this, you know what I mean? And then you start thinking like, wow, there's other people out there that are watching this to learn and things, and I really admire what you've done with the Comics Masterclass. And is that just Comics Masterclass in Google? They can get
it's
to
comicsmastermind.com. I haven't put any PayPal buttons up there for a long time because if people are really interested, they'll just email me and then I'll let them know. But all the descriptors of the courses are on there, how long they are, what each module is about, who teaches it, all the biographies of the people who teach it. Everything you need to know is on there. I would really encourage people to understand genre more because if they don't, it can really jeopardize this is not a word, but the pitchability of something they want to take to a publisher if they don't fully understand the genre. Or I do remember reading. I think you have to really drill down. I think you have to be really open to learning. So I'm glad that you're open to learning. I remain in a state where I'm permanently open to learning. I mean, I was speaking today with a friend of mine who's up your way. She's an Aboriginal archaeologist. And I just shut up and just listen to what she has to say, and it's just soak it all in. And I think part of being a creator is really keeping everything open to learning, and know that no matter how old you are or how experienced you are or how wise you are still learning new things all the way, and just let them all soak in. But also, I think it's important for people to be self-aware and to really understand the concepts within, psychological concepts. So there's a lot more of it out there. There's articles everywhere about what narcissism is, for example. Whereas, 20, 30 years ago, you wouldn't find anything like that. So people are really kind of understanding some of these concepts. But, look at things like defense mechanisms and how people use those. And not only can improve your characterization and put conflict into your stories, but you can learn a lot about yourself and how you react to the situation, how people are reacting as well. I think there's a lot of really fantastic information about archetypes. There are the hero's journey archetypes, but there's ones that go beyond that. I've just learned a whole new set of archetypes, which are to do with addiction. And it is absolutely fascinating, trauma-based stuff. This whole world has opened up that I wish I had these tools when I was a clinical hypnotherapist many years ago, because this is like lifted the lid of everything. There's a woman called Caroline Myss, Myss, who has identified something like 60 different archetypes in the world, and everyone has about 8 archetypes inside them. You read the list and then you see, hey, that's one of my archetypes.
You can identify with certain
you can
ones.
identify your 8 kind of archetypes. Are you like a scribe or an author is one of them. An advocate, which is somebody who might be in the justice, a police officer or a judge or somebody like that. There's the white knight, someone with a hero complex who goes in and rescues people all the time. When you see them all, it's like, whoa, not only can you relate, it's like putting them all together for you, but you can actually come up with a character study for your stories as well. We got to meet.
Yes, that's Lloyd. Yeah.
Hiya, Lloyd.
Sorry to interrupt, that cheeky bugger. Hang on.
No, that was lovely.
Yeah, he pops up every now and then. That's usually him. Yeah, he likes the camera more than me, mate. He takes after his dad. Yeah.
Anyway, look, I've just gone on a bit of a ramble there. Yeah.
No. I like that because I think this is a fluidity of Chinwag, because it's I don't know everything about archetypes and stuff like that, but with modern psychology and things like that, like things are definitely becoming not as. When I was young, and in school, people were just looked at as different. You know what I mean? Like, oh, he's a little different, or he's that. You know what I mean? There was no specific understandings towards someone that may have not been normal. Here we go to normal. Again. and now we understand behaviors and what's brought about from people, and again, I guess the psychology of like shadow work. What we don't like about someone else is like an automatic is a reflection of us, so like we should accept and that sort of thing. I think all that sort of stuff, man, is very interesting to get into if you want to be a better writer. I think that's also super interesting to get into if you want to be a better artist, because you do understand the subtleties of a glance, a smirk.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
How integral, those little things in the background are that some people wouldn't notice. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Again, I mean, for people out there, again, I guess that comes down to the depth of how you want to go into comic books. Some comic books, like a sort of, no disrespect to anyone. I love comic books, so I love everyone that creates comic books, even if I've never met you. All right, so I'm just talking. So don't send any emails to Shane, like, because yeah, they like comics are beautiful, but obviously there's different ones. There's light and fluffy ones, like there's deep and dark ones. There's psychological ones. There's ones that are based on, like I'm currently in a state of admiration for autobiographical comic books, because I'm doing like Battle for Bustle, and I've had 2 years off that because of all the trauma and addictions and stuff that I'm getting over, and I finally come back to my comic book with a whole different outlook on life. But I'm also doing an autobiographical exploration of my own experiences over the last couple of years through addictions and breakdowns in relationships, and how people treat you and things like that. And it's a multimedia type thing. So in order for me to, I guess, sort of have a gauge on where you're going, because that stuff can be raw. You start off that sort of stuff real angry, like, and then you gauge it. Man, there's a lot of things that I would recommend people like go out and check out, like Sarah Firth's book. That's brave. Like Bo Jardine did a book about his heroin addiction many years ago that's available for free on his website. That's brave. Like autobiographical books are, brave, man. Spedsy, my mate Rob, talks about depression and anxieties with Sluggish Brave. They're all, I guess, their own archetypes.
Darren Close did one.
Oh yes, he did too. Yeah,
which was very good.
Yeah, I can't remember the name of that. What was the name of that? Oh, I know it. It's him on a drawing desk down.
Yeah.
He was shortlisted for a ledger for it. I can't remember, but people should check that out.
He did 2 parts to it, I think.
Yeah, because struggle.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's yeah, that was beautiful.
It was Shane, was it? Was that
Shane? Yeah.
Thanks, Shane.
Yeah, that was Shane, champion. Yeah, no, it was beautiful. All right. Well, Julie, as I wind down this evening's show, I guess we've covered a lot tonight, man.
We did cover a lot. I have one parting thought as well.
Is there anything that you would like to add before we wander off into the evening and allow the people to digest all of the things that we've discussed?
I would like to add something. You said this about 5-6 minutes ago, and that was about how you used to study comics and break down and look at all the panels and everything in the panels, and that is one of the best ways to learn about comics. That you will learn so much from doing that. I used to do pre-comics. I used to do that with film, with my friend Bruce. Joseph Zecharias was part of it, and our 2 friends, Nick and Paul, who run Makeup Effects Group in Sydney. They happened to have won the ACTA award for best makeup just in a week ago for the movie Talk to Me, the horror movie Talk to Me. But we used to get together maybe every 6 weeks, and one of us would be the leader, and we would choose a movie. The leader would take us through the movie scene by scene, and then we would just break it down, look at how the music is used, look at the color palettes. look at the costuming, look at, you know, how lines are used, diagonal lines and shots, everything, break it all down. And then later on, you know, after I started to do that with comics as well, you can learn so much. So I would advise any people who are into comics to do what you did before, which is just to pick up a graphic novel or a comic book and then read it from beginning to end quickly, and then go back and then look at it panel by panel by panel and look at what the intention is of the writer and the illustrator and the artist in the book. I think that is a very, very powerful thing to do to learn about the craft.
Yeah.
That's
Thank
all.
you. I'm glad. I sort of, I would agree with that. I didn't know that you were going to agree with how I learned, but I'm very thankful you did. And the weird thing is, to add to that, is another dad story before, like we move on, because he was a cool dad. When I was young and I was going to bed, he used to come in and he'd chill out with me, You'd put your kid to bed, And what we used to do is we used to read a comic book. So he'd have the comic book and I'd be sitting there. And he had like 1,000 voices. So every character would have a different voice. And he'd be boom, boom, bang, bang, bang. And while we were sitting there, he really, I don't know, I just got lucky, I guess. I don't know. And he was like, you draw your foreground characters first. You see that, you see how the background, that sort of thing. Can you see from this angle here, Spider-Man's going to come up and stand on that corner. Why is he doing that? Oh, because he's come from there. Yes, and you've got to think about things like that. So as he was reading me these stories, he was putting me through. I didn't realize at the time, but I guess it's those subliminal things that, like your parents do, or your brothers and sisters do, I guess. But it's just so you observe, I guess, and I got lucky. So I hope I hope everyone's listened to what Julie has said. It's been a wealth of knowledge, and I hope people investigate. Oh man, it's been a super pleasure, man. Yeah, no, like, mate, I appreciate getting the opportunity to meet you. It's just like we're gonna. Like we were hoping to have this happen last year, but like things happen in the way, and maybe looking back on it now and how we spoke about meditations and spirituality and how it is for creativity, maybe perhaps at that stage I wasn't ready to talk to you about those things in such an open fashion as well. You know what I mean? Like, and we've had, this is the moment where it, combined, and I've learned a whole heap of stuff that, like Matt, it's been a good chinwag, and this is the beauty of the chinwag, man. I love chinwag. All right. Well,
I suspect there might be some behind the scenes chats about those themes as well.
I suspect so. Yeah. No, that's cool with me. That's cool with me. All right. Well, Julie, is there anywhere that if people are looking for you, people want to reach out to you, have a yarn, find your work, whereabouts do they do that?
You just go to julieditrich.com, my website, or email me, or if you're interested in comics masterminds, comicmastermind.com. Yep.
Okay, very good. All right, so everyone, there you go. Find Julie on Facebook and have a yarn to her. You know, wonderful Australian creator. Super happy to have Julie on the show, and had an awesome chinwag. I do so love Tuesdays, because remember, Tuesdays for chinwagging. So everyone out there, everyone that's watched, thank you very much. We will be back next week, 7:30, next Tuesday, 7:30 p.m. Queensland time. Weirdly enough, the last comic book we discussed. Good on you, Bo. He's a champion, that Omni Bo.
Thanks, Omni Bo.
Yeah, no, Omni Bo is Bo from Aussieverse. So
okay.
He's a good man. He loves his comic books, mate.
Does he?
Okay. Yeah, he does. Now, weirdly enough, the last comic book we talked about was from Darren Close Struggle. And in a strange way to bring the circle to a close for tonight's show is Darren Close. We'll be on Tuesday at Chinwag next week to discuss all things, I guess, Darren Close. And we'll have a yarn about old man roots and all of those things. Weirdly enough, Julie, the first comic book I ever did was Killaroo comic. And you know, I don't recall I've ever met Darren in person. So it's going to be another
well, you're at like the opposite ends of the East Coast.
But, you know, technology brings you together, even though sometimes technology just scrambles you a little bit at the start.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, I'm going to let everyone go.
Lee, and thanks, Shane.
No problem. Thanks, everyone. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Aussieverse Comics, show sponsored by the Comics Shop. So get in there and check out some comics. Hey? Yeah, and there's Lloyd, little Lloydie, man. The Comics Shop sponsors the shows. Like and subscribe across all platforms and media. Chinwag is always made with love. Be kind to everyone out there. Kindness goes a long way. You know, like smile, be happy, find peace, love, create, and community is unity. Have a lovely evening. Thank you.
Lovely to meet you. See you later. Bye.
See ya.
This show is sponsored by the Comics Shop. Check out comics.cx for all things comics and find out what comics is all about. We hope you enjoy.